Hi, it's Peggy at Headshots by Peggy, and today we have Kevin E. West with us.
Hola.
Kevin, I'm so excited that you agreed to come on.
Happy to.
Now, Kevin, you've been in the industry for some time.
Oh, long time.
You're
yes.
an old guy, like.
Thanks. Yes,
Like,
I am an old guy.
We're about
Or
the same
old
age.
Hollywood guy-ish. One of the two. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many years have you been acting?
I moved to. Essentially, I started about January 1st, 1987, in LA. I had been an actor in Atlanta long before Atlanta is what it is today, and then I came out here.
Yeah.
I was there for a couple years.
Now, in your career, you've done tons and tons of things. One of the things that you did is you started the Actors Network.
I did. Founder of the Actors Network, May 1st, 1991.
And tell us what that was and what the purpose of that was.
Well, not that particularly different from my book or anything else that I've done. When I moved to California, which is no different than it is today, I just was younger and had not actually been here. So I'd been here for 4 years, essentially, 87, 88, 89, 90, and I was going into my 5th year leading up to May 1st, 91, and I felt like, based on the way that I had grown up, which was working from a very young age, not uncommon for small town people, right? And the fact that my mother had owned a small business, I was a little shocked and a little stunned, and I was also an athlete. So I was a little surprised, not by the concept of the lack of discipline, but I was a little surprised by sort of the lack of what I would say would be intelligent proactivity. And so I saw a lot of pain that I felt, I think subconsciously, that was just unnecessary. It was just unnecessary. And so you got to realize the Actors Network started in my apartment with a meeting of 6 of us sitting around my couch, all fully clothed, let's be clear. And so, sorry, it's a bad joke I made. It was, the Actors Network didn't start as like some business plan. It was just,
People trying to, let's get together and figure this out.
I mean, it was an early one of those things, that how theater companies start and how improv troupes start, and that's how the Actors Network started. It was not some grandiose idea. It was just, we should really get together and discuss some of this crap and really look for solutions, just because of stuff that I was doing at the time that I felt was being effective. And that's really how the network started.
Yeah, and that's really why I have this vlog, is because there are so many actors out there that get frustrated, that just don't get it. They make really bad mistakes that don't make sense.
Yes.
Just from a logical point of view, sometimes I'm like, I have clients and they're telling me stuff, and I just want to say, let's sit down for a minute.
And there's a reason for that. It's because we are the most undereducated professional community in the world, bar none, in my opinion, and it's not even close.
Right.
And yet when you say the word education, especially in the last 18 years, with the advent of digital technology, with the ability of because since I created Actor Biz Guru, which is a video series of education, it doesn't mean that it makes the education any better.
Right.
It just means there's a lot of people out there espousing things that sometimes actually make it worse for actors. Because, as it is with one of the chapters in my book, we are constantly looking for the answer to how we're going to become a star.
That was my vlog last week, is the secret to success. Yeah. Guess what? There isn't one.
There's a whole bunch of things.
There's a whole bunch of things that you need to do, but there isn't one. You can't take a pill and wake up in the morning and be a star. You've got to do a lot of. You got to put in the work. You've got to, have the attitude.
Yes.
And you've got to have the mindset.
And part of that mentality, Peggy, is, to me, which is part of where the network came from, and where, when I speak in public and anything that you would find in my book, is that I understand the frustration, and I understand how difficult the business is. Certainly, I've been doing it for a long time. But we have to get off of this mentality of only having to do something once. We all want to walk into one audition and book a series. We want someone to tell us the perfect teacher for us so we never have to experience anyone else. We want someone to tell us the best photographer and we never have to experience anything else. We don't want to experience any difficulty, any pain, we don't have to want to do any research. These are products, you guys, just so you know, of why people make fun of actors. No matter where you're from, no matter where you started in this country or another, the concept of this being a job, this being work, this being, aside from the craft part, it just is. And there are just things that we don't want to have to do, and we constantly look for guarantees. This is the wrong business to be looking for a guarantee in.
This is a wrong business to be looking for. I've been self-employed since I was 19 years old. I've never had a real job.
There we go. Oh, good for you. I have. I've had like 12 of them.
Well, I mean, I've had, 6 months here doing telemarketing and, building things up. But as far as like having any kind of a career job, I've never, this is it. This is what I've always done.
There you go.
And I feel like, for years, I thought, oh, I'm so lucky I do what I love. But I'm like, why is it that my work's so good, but Joe Blow over there is getting paid $1 bazillion for crappy work? And then I realized you have to be serious. I was kind of having fun doing what I do, but I didn't have any business knowledge. I didn't have any business skills. I wasn't running it like a business. And actors, this is your business. Like, you can't just, oh, well, I don't have an audition today, I can sleep all day. No, you've got to, this is your job. It doesn't matter if you're getting paid today. You're still an actor today.
It is. Unfortunately, part of what you just said, Peggy, is the mentality that I certainly wasn't provided with. Most of us are not provided with when we start out. And how we define what the business is would be one of the reasons why this book was written and one of the reasons why I started the Actors Network, because we tend to define the business as what I call in this book the setup.
And that's what I was hoping to lead into. So let's go for it. This is a great book.
Thank you.
And it's set up, it's called The Seven Deadly Sins, and it's kind of set up in a biblical,
Absolutely.
So tell us about this book.
Okay, well, it's called Seven Deadly Sins: The Actor Overcomes. So you can find it on Amazon, buy it as an ebook, or you can buy the
and I'll have the links down below.
The printed version. But when I started to write this in probably 92 or 3 is when I first sat down and wrote some of what was coming out of the Actors Network meetings. That's how I started it. But then the network grew, and I was doing a ton of television along with some relationships, and the next thing I knew, 15 years went by. And that's what happens. Like, for those of you who have like 3 kids, you're like, wow, we're 25 years ago. So by the time I got around to really sitting down to do this, I'd kind of organized it as a 5-book series, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, grad. But by the time I really sat down to write it, digital technology had come along, the whole world had changed, and so I didn't feel like no one was going to read 5 books. So the 7 Deadly Sins, the reason I chose that is because the 7 Deadly Sins are based on human frailty and how we're flawed as people. And they're also all related kind of to our emotion and our psyche. And the biggest challenge to me we have as actors in this business is that we're human. We're not selling coffee, and we're not selling phones, and we're not selling cars. We are and are selling us. Yeah. So the human nature, and we're also extremely emotional beings. So to me, I found a parallel in just putting the word actor in front of each deadly sin. And when I put it down on a piece of paper and I looked at it, I was like, I do this all the time. That's solid. I can go and take all of the stuff, and it's not all that I've covered in the network, but I took a good 66 to 75% of the principles and the practical mentality and also the proactive efforts and put them inside of the 7 sins. But it's not 7 chapters long. No. I made 5 traps and 5 solutions under each sin. Yeah. And they're short chapters. It's an easy read, but that makes it, there's about 70 conversations in this book. Yeah.
So you've been in this game for a while. What is the one thing the trap that you see actors consistently from when you started to today that they're still falling into?
Because there's no answer, it should be easy. That's, the mentality of, and I remember driving out to California from Georgia. Right. because there's no answer, because there's no technically right way, we do very little research. We do we don't come prepared.
Photographers do the same thing. They
course.
buy a camera and they think, hey, I've got an eye. They don't know anything about lighting or posing or
Composition.
body types.
Actors do it
anything.
when taking pictures.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They just look online, they listen to one friend, but one of the big things about taking pictures would be, for example, like today, you and I met in person
Right.
at another location. Now we're sitting here today, and now I've been to your venue where you shoot. And if you're going to tell me that you think doing something as chemical, just like dating, and anyone who knows me knows that in here you'll find a ton of dating analogies, and when I speak, I do a ton of dating analogies because we're human. And in terms
And relationships
and the
are
online
everything.
dating app thing, which is absurd to me, is they're not online dating apps, they're meeting apps, because you can't decide you want to go out with someone until you meet them. But just the fact that we've met, we now have a chemical cellular association and awareness that we didn't have before we met.
Right.
And the fact that actors, that's just a metaphor for all of what your question is. We skip standard basic things that even many actors have done in their own lives, in their business, growing up. I used to make a joke all the time that female actors would do more research on a pair of shoes than they would on a casting director they're going to read for. It's not chauvinistic, it's not gender biased, it is what it is. Guys would spend more time focusing on fantasy football than they would figuring out anything about the agent. And today, the ability to research is so easy.
It's so easy.
Because I get to make the joke, you get to make the
Yeah.
joke that when I was an actor new into Los Angeles, I had to walk to school back and forth both ways in 2 feet of snow
2
with
feet
no
of snow
shoes.
With no shoes on. That's
Right.
that's how it was
So-
when I was a kid growing up in
and
Kansas.
so now it's so easy, but we don't take some of the basic principles in a people business, even the business of show business. You could break into the stuff you do administratively, like research, versus the stuff you do meeting people, both of which have nothing to do with having a game plan, and none of which have anything to do with the craft of acting, the show of acting. But show business is such an overused term, and then the education on the business is we want the answer, and we want it quick.
Well, and this is a town where it matters who you know.
Yeah?
And yet nobody wants to build a relationship. Nobody wants to take the time to build
Right.
a relationship.
Which
and
is why-
it blows my mind. I'm
Right.
like, you know it matters who you know.
Yeah.
Now I know you. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, you know what? This so and so would really get a kick out of Peggy. I should introduce them. Maybe they'll get, you know, and that's how it works.
Yep. And
You
also,
know?
I speak at the SAG Conservatory, or you
Yeah.
could use the word teach. I just don't choose to use the word teach. But I do one of my many conversations, which is building a spider web, how to build your spider web. And that's this coming Wednesday night for anybody who's in LA who's a union member of the conservatory. I do that. But we don't meet people because of the internet. We don't
Yeah.
meet people because the rest of our lives are so electronic and so not in person. We just simply don't do it. And then when we are out places because a friend invited us to a film festival or
Right.
something like that, we actually are not comfortable because we know that it's about us. We're not comfortable going up and talking to people. So we have this real paradoxical conundrum of why we wind up just spending our time hanging out with out-of-work actors and just spending our time only in class, which unfortunately this is a visual business, and it does, because there's plenty of your type,
yeah.
there's plenty of Merrick's type, there's plenty of my type. But when you actually know somebody on an in-person basis, then it does separate you from the other people who just look like you on a computer screen from a submission list.
Exactly. And if you take the time to have conversations with people, because I'm a photographer, that's what I've done my whole life. I've done a lot of events. And so when I'm shooting an event, I'm the life of the party, because I have to talk to people. But my personality, if I'm not working, I was the one that's sitting in the corner. And when I moved to Southern California, I realized I'm never going to meet anyone if I don't talk to someone. Because I moved out here by myself, not knowing anyone. With my kids, but and
Well,
but as
them.
far them,
Well,
I brought
them.
them along. But what I would do is I would pretend like I was working, because when I was totally confident with the camera in my hand. So I would, in my head, I'm like, okay, what would you do if you were at a party? If you were working this event. And I say the same thing to actors. When you're at networking things, don't go sit in the corner and talk to the 3 people you know. Make it a scenario in your head, and your job is to, in this scene you're meeting people, so go out and act, and then all of a sudden you realize in real life you're meeting people.
Yes.
You know, whatever it takes you to do to get over that shyness or that insecurity, you have to get out there. You have to talk to people. It's all about meeting people and building.
I think, unfortunately, the reason why a lot of us don't do that is because it's not just the talking. It would be the same as a man going up to a woman anywhere in the world and, for lack of a better phrase, hitting on her, which can be done obviously completely classy, completely funny. This has nothing to do with Me Too. This is part of that problem, is we over extreme things. But the issue, Peggy, to me is what's in this book and what's when I speak is that we don't know how to talk to, as I say, people on the other side of the desk, because we're so afraid of so many things.
Right.
Which is why I do this thing called How to Build Your Spiderweb. Seven key ways
and
to build your
is that
spider.
every Wednesday night?
No, it's once a month at the SAG Conservatory.
Okay.
And it's for 3 hours.
Once a month.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
quite a
this
conversation.
This is gonna air on Thursday, so
It's
this
gonna
was
be after.
last night. But
So it's
the following
it's October 10th.
October
The second
10th.
Wednesday in October, October 10th at the SAG Conservatory. Building Your Spiderweb, 7 key ways to start to build.
Okay.
Because we as actors are so afraid to speak to someone in
Right.
casting. We're afraid to speak to someone who's an agent. We're afraid, we don't even sometimes know what to say if we're talking to a director. And ultimately, without a game plan in your
Right.
head or a good transference, a thing like you do
Right.
with the photography part, we ultimately wind up being really afraid to have to answer a question or sound stupid or not sure what we're going to say. How you go about having game, like women say about men, got no game. That's literally one of the reasons why the Actors Network kind of didn't just get started but continued, was because I began to realize, oh, we don't have any game. We just want to have a picture, have a
Right.
representative, and hope it works out.
Right.
And I was never really built that way. I grew up how I grew up.
Right.
I didn't have a father. I've been working since I was 11, and I was a third baseman in baseball. So I was just kind of like, we got to do something about this.
let's
And
do
so
this.
I just went out to do. And, you know, I got kicked in the teeth a lot, and I made a lot of mistakes and all that. But that's part of what you can get from me, is all the mistakes I made. And most of them are not black and white. They're not black and white mistakes. A couple of them, sure. But most of the stuff we make mistakes with are very subjective. They're very in the moment. Who's your audience? Not what you said, how you said it, not what you did, how you did it. And getting your own
Right.
je ne sais quoi with how you do that. Not me. We can accomplish the same thing, but you're Peggy and I'm Kevin. We're different types.
Right.
We're
gonna reach different people.
We're different products in this business. I'm this kind of pen, and you're, it matches my shirt, and yours, and you're that. I mean, it's not necessarily that there's not a guaranteed answer.
Right.
But there's a much more intelligent way to go about pursuing your career, not just being set up for the business of being an actor. And if you take one thing away from today, take away that. There's a distinct subjective difference between the way you go about pursuing your career and the way you set up your business as an actor. Two different things. Most of us tend to just do the setup part, and we think that was the business. We don't do any outward effort. We get our online profiles and our pictures done, then we go do the show part of going to class, and we do other such things, but we don't really have a way of going about really pursuing the business.
That's good. Some good stuff.
So, just a thought for you here on what day is this is gonna come out on a Thursday.
This is Thursday.
So it's
It's
not
Thursday.
the day that we okay.
Wink, wink. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Thursday.
It's just
today.
like Thursday, only it actually in LA it is. It's any day that ends in Y because the sun's out.
The
So,
sun's out, and you know what? The sun's always out.
There you go. Even when it's raining, it's
Even
out.
when well, yeah, and when it rains, it's just give it a minute, and the sun will come out if it's
Yes,
not.
exactly.
But it only rains here enough to mess up your car. I've noticed that.
And a few homes on the side of a hill.
Oh,
If
yeah,
it rains
yeah,
enough.
if it rains enough.
If it rains enough.
Do you have a house on the side of a hill?
No, I do, and I would not. I would not.
See,
I looked
that's
at one
because-
once, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing it. Earthquakes, mudslides, I'm out.
That's because we were raised to be smart about stuff like
Yeah,
that.
you know, Kansas and Tennessee. There you go.
You had to think about, well, why would you build a house on the, anyway. So tell me what is different now? What is like that, what we just talked about, that's like overall. Now that, you know, because when you started, it was an 8x10 headshot. It was a resume on the back. You ordered, 100 of them and blah, blah, blah. Now things are different. Things are really digital. You know, you've got your casting about that sends out your, you know, your casting breakdowns. Everything's all, you know, really quick and easy at your fingertips. What is it, the same pitfall today, or is there a new pitfall? It's the same thing. Nothing's changed, even though the whole world has changed.
Philosophically, in my
Right.
opinion, the same problem with Hollywood has always been the same problem with Hollywood, is that with a lot of businesses that require, you know, access or opportunity. Certainly, I think the window dressing has changed. You know, for lack of a better phrase, when I do the same analogy that I do with people, you know, our craft that we use to work as an actor comes from the inside of us out, but that we all walk around with a shell. We all have a particular type of exterior, this pen versus
Right.
another pen, both being products. I think the exterior in Hollywood has changed. The internal part of Hollywood hasn't changed, because the exterior part is, okay, now it's color headshots instead of black and white. Now they're all digital on a profile that people click and okay, all of the mechanisms have changed. But isn't the core of Hollywood? Why are we still saying that Hollywood's who you know? They said that in 1955.
Yeah.
So 1955 to 2018, if it's still who you know in some ways, and or for me, I've had 46 representatives in my career. How good is your representative, and how good of job do they do for you? Those issues of getting a chance to walk in the room. I mean, if you had $1 every time you heard an actor say, "If I just get a shot at the title,"
get in there.
which, yes, I understand and I agree, but that's why I've said for years, to me, the difficulty in Hollywood is not setting up your career and being in your city, wherever that is, whether it's Melbourne or Sydney or London or anywhere else. It's getting in that room. And how are you going to get in that room if you don't have a situation or a friend or something that makes getting in that room not only easy, but regular enough to give yourself actually a chance to book a job in this business?
Right.
Because we all go through tough stretches. There was a stretch I went through in my life for 10 years. I booked everything, like all the time. And then you go through stretches, which I'm in now, because kind of white guys my age or who are not a star are actually having kind of a tougher time in Hollywood. And now you go through a stretch where you don't get as many auditions. And amazingly, for whatever reason, I haven't booked as much in the last 3 or 4 years as I typically do, based on how many auditions you have. But you still have to be able to get in that room. And that hasn't changed about Hollywood.
Yeah.
Yes, Hollywood is great. And I personally think that the internet has actually, in some ways, made Hollywood harder. Because what it's done for our community
Opened it
and
up.
to our community at the same time is it's basically added in a firewall that we now fall for, which is, well, this is all online, so I can't do anything in person, which is really convenient because it's lazy. It means you don't have to drive around Los Angeles, and you never have to risk actually talking to someone. And I think all of those things are a detriment when what you're selling is a walking billboard of what your product is. So there's a lot of things I could say that the internet has done to change Hollywood in a bad way for us. Listen, I love saving trees and beavers. I'm all for it in terms of paper and all that sort of stuff. But I don't think the core of Hollywood has changed an ounce. The economy of Hollywood has changed because the world economy has changed because of digital technology. How products are being made, how different movies. You know, like I said, when I came to Hollywood, there were about 400 movies made a year, and there were about 120 television shows. Now there's 450 television shows, and they make about 65 studio films a year. So that stuff has changed. But again, we're not trying to make a studio film most of the time. We're just trying to get an audition. So I think still the core of that, it's made agents think differently, it's made managers think differently, casting yes, all those things have wrinkles and tweaks of changes, but hey, that's just, you know, you got to adjust. That's what the business is.
You got to be flexible.
Yeah.
And ready to.
You got to be willing to change and do different stuff in different ways. And a lot of our community is not willing to do that.
So I'm a headshot photographer. So you have had, I imagine, uncountable headshot sessions in your life.
A lot.
Yeah.
A
All right.
lot.
So what's the main trap that people fall into when they go to get a headshot?
I'm going to tend with any of these things that are service for hires or, you know, consumer retail engagement, which is that is. But in our business, I addressed one of them earlier, which is we don't meet the photographer, and I cut no slack on this. a lot of times when you hear me speak, Peggy, I will lend a lot of subjectivity because, you know, this business isn't math and science. But I will not cut slack on this one. In my opinion, I don't care, and I know photographers who feel the same way. If a photographer wants to charge you $400 to $600 or more to actually shoot with them, and they're not willing to take 10 minutes to sit down and say hi to you, I'd never shoot with them, period. So one of my biggest traps is we don't meet the photographer ahead of time. We don't see where we're going to be shooting with them ahead of time. Past that, you start getting into the challenges, and I know you know this based on colors and how they look on you. You get into the people don't have a really good necessarily self-identity about their product in this business. What your wardrobe might be in your personal life, or even when you worked at a corporation, might not be the wardrobe you would choose to take pictures in for this business. So that takes a lot of self-identification. Also, I tell people all the time, if you believe you're a great commercial type, then look at your age, look at your gender, look at your ethnicity, go pick 4 or 5 television shows that have commercials where there are series regulars that look like you, and then go watch the commercials that happen, and then get that wardrobe, have that haircut-ish. We're not talking about being a robot or rubber stamp, but we don't do research, Peggy. We don't put, and then the other thing that I will say, and I can keep it kind of short on this, is composition. This is part of the problem. Composition is what's behind you when someone's shooting you, and ultimately that's the photographer's fault or the photographer's responsibility. But at the same time, you need to be cognizant. Here we are right here. This is a good example, the two of us. She's wearing a solid color shirt, and I'm wearing one that looks like a test pattern if you were to see this in the wrong light. Now, you got to imagine, this is going to be a little tiny thumbnail on a screen. On a casting director's commercial screen or theatrical screen where there's like 150, 200 pictures. So what you're bouncing off of in the background back there, like this is depth of field, this is out of focus in the back, let's just say, or if you're against a flat wall. So your composition matters. So if you wear a patterned shirt like this and the photographer, and a photographer sticks you behind you and they have some lattice work or there's like some bricks and stuff, like that picture's worthless. You literally, your eyes get lost. You just look like there's a whole pile of crap behind you. So being aware of your composition, getting better at understanding your product in this business and its wardrobe versus who you are as a person, and then also meeting the photographer in person and having a sense of them and making part of your decision based on that. I'd pay $100 more for a session with someone I knew I was going to vibe with really well versus it always being just who's the least expensive.
And the least expensive, anybody that's listened to my vlogs knows that the least expensive is not always the least expensive.
Sometimes it can be, but a lot of times it's not.
Yeah, because you got to redo it anyway. But that's one of the main reasons why I do this vlog, is because if you can't stand listening to me for 6 minutes, you are not going to want to shoot with me. And I'm not for everyone.
That's a great point.
I'm not. There's 4 million people in Los Angeles. I am not for everyone. And to be honest, some people I don't want to shoot with them. There are people I don't want to shoot with.
100%.
Because it's going to turn out miserable. They're going to hate their headshots, and they're going to tell everybody I'm terrible. So why would I want to shoot with them?
Right. But this falls into the area where you talk about my book, and it is that a lot of our community, hear me loud and clear, guys, don't take it personally. We like excuses. We have a bad headshot. We like complaining.
Yeah.
It's one of the main reasons why, you know, running an organization like the Actors Network for 23 and a half years was a challenge, because our community in general likes to complain, but you don't want to do the work ahead of time to make sure that you don't have something to complain about. So that's a huge part of what my book is about, is front-ending that, getting the result you want and really putting in your time to make sure that you get the result you want.
So you don't know this because we haven't shot together yet, but in order for me to shoot somebody, they have to take the time to fill out a questionnaire. And it makes them think about what roles, what are we doing? And, you know, and if I have a client that won't even fill out a questionnaire, that won't even take 15 minutes to say what type they are, guess what?
See you.
So, you know, because if you want to have a successful headshot, if you want to have a successful business, you've got to do that's perfect.
I do agree.
That's
I do
perfect.
agree. 100%.
Now, let's talk about your writing, because
yes, ma'am.
because you are, you've done amazing things for actors, but you have a new book coming out.
I do have a new book.
It has nothing to do with acting.
No, it doesn't.
It's just about Kevin E. West being awesome.
And my next 3 will not have anything to do with acting. Listen, people ask me all the time why I started the Actors Network, and then people ask me why I closed the physical doors of the Actors Network. Well, first of all, I did 100 webinars that are 15 minutes each long, 25 hours worth of content that you can find on the Actors Network website, actors-network.com. So, online membership, the Actors Network lives in that sense. That's that. This thing I co-authored with the fabulous woman named Carolyn Berry, who was one of the top commercial casting directors in all of Los Angeles. We lost her 3 years ago. She passed away. But this is a Technique 2-hour CD, gettingthejob.com, and my book you can easily find on Amazon. So one of the reasons I closed the Actors Network, Peggy, was because you start to get to a certain age and you look at your life and you go, what am I doing? What do I want to do? And I'm a Pisces, and from the time I was a little kid, I was always writing something. My mom was a singer, and she used to ask me to write songs, which I'm actually working on a couple these days. But I had this long list of things I wanted to do, ideas that I had, and you all of a sudden wake up and go, man, this organization, trying to run this and have a career at the same time, was basically like having 3 kids. I mean, just from hours in the day.
Right.
It was like I had 3 kids every day. I was never going to get to it. So one of the reasons I did close the physical doors to the Actors Network on June 30th, 2013, was so that I could get to some of these other things. And my new book, which is a gift book, so it'd be one of those little square books that you get next to the registered Barnes & Noble. At the top, it's called Kevin's Dictionary. It's called Life in a Word. And it really is an idea I had at walking with a friend of mine who's no longer with us in October of 2007 with a particular word that we all consider normal. And if I put the word up on the wall and asked you to write a definition of it, we'd all write some version of kind of the same thing, or maybe a few, but it's little stories of scenes from life associated with a word that do fit it, but it's never how you would define it.
It's never how you would define it.
I mean, the one that I tend to tell people as an example is school, the word school. And what it is, it's a story about 2 teenage kids who are drinking, driving downtown, bark at some girls, swerve, cop pulls them over, arrests them, parents come for the passenger kid, bail him out, take him home, kid who was driving, sitting there, mom comes in, cries with him, and then leaves, and then dad comes in. And dad says, you're going to learn from this, and the kid says, yeah, he certainly will, and the dad gets up and walks out and makes him spend the night in jail, and that's school.
That's cool.
So that's an example of all of them, and the book has 50 words, so it's 50 stories.
50 little
with Webster's definition on the left, and then a little story that it does match the word, but it just doesn't.
Right.
So it's 1,000 words. A picture can create 1,000 words, but sometimes a word can make a whole new picture. That's the tagline for the gift book.
That's pretty cool. I'm excited about that because clearly, as a photographer, I use the picture's worth 1,000 words. But that's I like that.
If it goes well, I have 7 companion books. I have sport in a word, religion in a word, politics in a word, work in a word, home in a word. So we'll see if it goes forward. But I'm going up to speak in the Midwest in October for a week. From like Green Bay to Chicago to schools and universities. And a lot of the conversation will actually be about society and community and culture and what we're going through right now, because the stories in the book are they're human. They're part of what they're just done in a different way.
Well, I think you've had a very successful life and a successful career. So are you kind of moving to is this what you kind of want to do right now? I can't imagine that you'd ever leave acting, but is this kind of like you want to add a lot of speaking and teaching and
in the vein of how actors survive Hollywood?
Right.
I don't mean financially, because everybody's financial scenario is different. But when I first came here, Peggy, I had been a college golfer, so I still played golf for the first 2 or 3 years heavily when I first moved here, and then I transitioned in to playing baseball because I had been a all-star baseball player. And I played in the sort of adult grown-up leagues until I was almost 40 years old, and I played in in 6 men's World Series in Phoenix. That was my release. That
Yeah.
was my, so now this is not a release. It's certainly much more poignant than that
Right.
and much more pointed than that. But I tend to write most of the time after 8 p.m. On all this. I'm in the process of writing a dating book. I have another humorous gift book right behind this one. So my brain, I don't sleep a lot.
I think creative people don't.
Yeah, I don't sleep a lot.
I mean, I know I have the same problem, and I remember as a kid, I was probably in high school, my dad bought me a notebook. He set it by my bed, and he said, when you wake up, write it down, then you can go back to sleep. Because, you know, your brain, you don't want to forget something, so you don't go back to sleep. So that was, but I think people that are creative, they just got so many things going on. It's like, well, and so I think that's really, you know.
It's how the Actors Network started.
Exactly.
I woke up in the fall of 1990 at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had not just an idea, I had like an entire curriculum came out of my head at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I grabbed a piece of paper,
right.
And since that day, I've just slept with a tablet next to my bed.
Yeah.
I just do. But no, listen, if writing winds up being something that, based on what I put out, becomes that for me, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm not, no, I mean, yes, I've worked a ton and I have a pension but I mean, I just auditioned for Mindhunter. I just auditioned for The Fix for ABC.
That's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, well, we're still waiting to see whether or not I get Mindhunter, so that's still in the hook. I mean, I read for Hawaii Five-0 like 4 times now, still haven't gotten it. SWAT twice. So no. I think I probably would like to make a film or two still in my life, and I certainly am. Funny enough, since you're from Kansas, I own the life rights to kind of an amazing story of a very simple Kansas boy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from the late 70s and early 80s, and I'm writing it simultaneously as a screenplay, but also as a television show. So I'm always doing something. And it's not about not wanting to do on-camera work, but I only read for certain things.
Yeah.
I only go up for one-day guest stars, top-of-show guest stars, or series regulars. And in my category, those are fewer and further between. They just don't come up as often.
Now, I just want to make a little point here, since, you know, clearly we're not going to end anytime soon, so people are still watching. Great.
I hope.
So you
try to
mentioned
be
that
funnier.
you mentioned that you know, read for this show several times, and that's, I think, happens a lot, and that's not something an actor should be discouraged about. It means the casting director likes you, they just haven't found the fit for you yet, right?
It's the complete
It's
opposite.
awesome.
It's the complete opposite.
If you keep getting called in for the same show, they're like
100%. And this didn't used to ever happen, Peggy, because when I came here, I could not tell you, and I'm almost positive that I'm correct about this. From the first show that I booked, General Hospital, the first primetime show that I booked, Matlock, that'll tell you how old I am. I don't think I ever read for a show more than twice.
Yeah.
Now, back then, more often you went in, you read, and the producers were in the room. They got a sense of you in the room.
Right. Yeah.
You know, when digital came along, and finally we're in the place now where 65% to 95% of the auditions are either a self-tape and or you're reading with the associate and the assistant in the room for camera, and then they just send it off to someone, or they're watching it live, whichever it may be. It takes longer sometimes to find out, number one, but that repetitive reading stuff for me started around Desperate Housewives.
Oh yeah.
It was right around the time that it was, because I was a guest star on the first season of Desperate Housewives, and it was towards the end of the season, and I read for it 5 times. And I remember I walked in, and the casting, Scott is a friend of mine, and he goes, "Haven't you done this show?" And I looked at him and I go, "Well, if you would just freaking hire me, I would do the show." But it's been the same. Castle was 6 times. Bones was 6 times. I mean, I booked Criminal Minds on the first read, which was 2 episodes. But again, that's just, and you can't be, because I have news for you. No matter what type you are, okay, there's some exceptions if you're an extreme physical type. But if you're kind of somewhat normal, no matter your ethnicity, trust me, there's plenty of you in Los Angeles. If they choose to see you again, that means you really did a good job.
Yeah.
And it's the best indicator of what we all ask for feedback, and we want feedback. That is your feedback.
That's your feedback. They called you again.
Because this face right here, they're not short on dudes 42 to 50 in Hollywood who kind of are this kind of white guy. They're not short on them at all. And there's 5,000 of me with a long resume. And when I go to audition, you know how many people they see in my category for a guest star? 12, 8. So I've already kind of won-ish.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting called back to a show you didn't book again and again is brilliant.
Yeah. There's a show that Merrick, he's read for it 6 or 7 times, and it's like, it's funny because they always audition on a Friday at 5 p.m. and it's like, oh, all right. Well, I wish you'd book this so we could have our Friday evenings free.
Correct. Yeah. No, listen, a dear friend of mine, Mark Gant, who many of you watching may know, and you can easily look him up. Great looking guy, tremendous cat, terrific talent. Mark, loved the dude, blah. When I was reading for Criminal Minds the day I was there, he happened to be there. And it was my first read. We weren't reading for the same role. It was his 12th time, and I had never met anybody who'd read that many times.
12
and then I
times.
found out later, because I got on the first try, he had to go back to a 13th. He finally booked a show on his 14th audition for a show. And this is a guy who's talented, great look, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have anything to do with it.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, you should be much more concerned when you never get a shot at a show again.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean anything either. But if you're getting called back again and again, and or sometimes with casting offices that do more than one show, they call you in from other shows. Getting called in, period, today
is great.
is a good thing, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean,
Don't denigrate that.
I've had casting directors tell me they get 5,000 submissions for a thing, and then they're gonna call in.
That is correct.
They're gonna call in 15 people to audition. So if you get an audition, you've won.
Yeah, and when you've been around as long as I have, a lot of the guys in your category who are not stars, we all know each other. We know each other because we've been in an audition room since 1990, and some people are competitive, but most guys are pretty cool with one another. And sometimes they'll have an audition for something, I don't. Sometimes I'll have one, they don't. And then sometimes you walk in and it's like, hey, how's it going? We're both in here together. So, again, these are some of the commandments of the Actors Network. And if I don't get the job, it may as well be someone I know and like.
Well, and I think that because I've gone just because sometimes if Merrick has a crazy day, I'll drive him because if I have a slow day, and it's amazing to see, like, the men usually are pretty cool with each other. Now I have a 13-year-old daughter, and maybe it's not, maybe Merrick just has but I have a 13-year-old daughter, and I take her to auditions, and she's right on the edge because when there's older girls in there too, I'm like, oh my God, don't be that person. Don't be that person, because you know what? The assistants see it. People see it. Don't be that person.
So here's the question: aside from what I believe it does to you personally, what do you? And this is important because this is in my book.
Read this book.
What do you think might be the other reason why not to be that person when inside of the casting office? I'm asking you. I'm putting a question back to you just to see what you say. I
feel, and this is me personally, I think your audition starts when you park your car.
But why?
Because you're seen, and you have to. Yes, they want you to be talented. Yes, they want you to know your lines, but they want to know: are they going to be able to stand to work with you for 8 hours?
Bingo. Don't ever forget. No different than if you were an employer and you had a camera on your waiting room for a job at Hewlett Packard or at Coca-Cola. And if you watch demeanor and behavior of somebody as a human being towards somebody else who is a perceived competitor, which I just don't look at this business as
I don't either.
I don't either because me and my other white guy friends, we're really not the same dude.
No.
We're just in the same room. But that is unequivocally what Peggy is. That is the correct answer. Is what would you be like as an employee? Because remember, whether you're there as a one-line feature, and I do not mean featured extra, I mean a feature role, a co-star, or you're there for a week as a guest star, the bottom line is, in this business, you are coming into someone's existing home. Think of it as being a guest in someone's house. And that starts the second you walk in and sign in. And if you look like a jerk in the waiting room, I got bad news for you. Now, you could get away with being high maintenance a little bit in Hollywood over the years if you were a star. You couldn't really ever get away with it if you weren't the star. You sure as hell can't get away with it now.
That's true.
In the world we live in today, one of the things that's had the effect on Hollywood is the economy. This is why Netflix, this is why things have changed with our contracts and our economics. No patience for you coming across as a entitled, high-maintenance jerk when you're there for 1 day out of 8 on a television show, or you're there 3 days out of a 27-day shooting schedule on a film. And if they get a sense of that, it's not going to get written down anywhere. They're just going to say it to somebody. They're going to say, they seem like a real jerk in the waiting room. Just don't do it.
Yeah.
And focus on you.
Yeah.
Focus on your job. Do your thing. You're there to get a job.
When I moved from San Diego to LA, you know what people told me? Oh my God, there's so much competition in LA, you'll never make it. And I'm like, there's no competition, because what I do is not what that photographer does. There's 4 million people here. What you do is not what the other white guy does. And you're going to be a fit for the role that you're a fit for. And so this whole nitpicky, bad attitude, it looks ugly on you. It looks ugly on everyone.
And I still think I think ultimately it also just distracts you from what you need to go.
Because you need to be thinking about you, not worrying about,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've walked into some things, with the women, and I'm sorry, but I mean, that's where I see it, is that these women,
and this is a lot of what
the mean girl thing, and it's not cute.
Yeah, the mean girl, and some guys do it, but you get away with it sometimes in commercials because you don't have any dialogue, but you're still a principal, or you might get away with it in television because you have one line. But if you want to work in this business and you want to work a lot in this business, I assure you, when you get a 7-page pilot audition for David Fincher, you don't have time to walk in and do anything other than be prepared before you get there, sign in, and stay focused on what you have to do. And if you're thinking about something else and you're reading against me, I got bad news for you. I'm going to do a better job than you. And it's not because I'm necessarily better than you. It's because I'm not there to glad hands, shake hands, kiss babies, and smile at everybody. I'm there to be cordial and do my job. And ironically, that's exactly what the producers and the network and the directors want you to do if they hire you. Come in, be cordial, be professional, be punctual, do a great job, and go home. And it's hard for our community, because it's one of the first chapters in our book, that we are addicted to applause. And I understand it. I don't, guys, I have an ego too. Don't think I don't understand it. But in the film and television on-camera commercial process of auditioning and actually working, there's no applause because it's on camera. Now, yeah, once in a while, if it's a brilliant scene or whatever, the set will actually acknowledge, wow, that was some great stuff. But in terms of how most of us grow up with the theater and getting applause, or in class and getting applause, that's not the kind of feedback that we tend to get outside of being at an award show or something. Our jobs are filled with just do the work. And so I think it's a good mental practice to get used to just going into an audition room, to sign in the lobby, and just be prepared to do the work. And don't worry about everybody else, man. If you're a redhead, you ain't a brunette. If you're 5'10", you're not 5'2". You'll come along, and maybe even for a lot of the younger people now today, because of Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and a lot of the different kind of programming, whereas you may be in a lot more mixed rooms. It took half my career before I wound up in an audition room, and all of a sudden there were women there reading for the same role. There were black guys there reading for the same role. There were Latinos there reading. That's completely fine, but they're not you. If they're going to hire a 6'3" black dude, it ain't me.
Right.
And I'm not getting that job, but my job is still to go in and do a great job. So they'll what? So they'll call me back in again.
Because you want to impress them. You want to do your
Absolutely.
best. And you want, hey, if you don't get that job, maybe you weren't a fit for it.
100%.
Or maybe you look like somebody they didn't like. Who knows? We never know why you
All
don't
the
get
above.
the job.
All the
but
above.
the point is, if they liked you, they're going to call you back.
You just want more job interviews. That's all you want.
Exactly. I really appreciate you coming on and taking the time
My
to
pleasure.
do this.
Absolutely. Gettingthejob.com, Amazon 7 Deadly Sins, and you can follow me at the Kevin E is my Twitter.
The Kevin E.
At the Kevin E.
And all of his links are going to be below this. I'm going to link you all up so you can just click a button.
Okay. Clicking's good.
Clicking is good. And if you guys are watching this on Facebook, make sure you take the time to go over to my YouTube channel, subscribe so you don't miss any of my awesome videos. And most importantly, have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks
Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.